Hey, Crossing Recovery, as we sing together today, we're grateful for God's grace, His mercy. So let's respond together in worship and praise for all that He has done. Sing with me, our praise awaits. Our praise awaits you with the dawn. Our souls awake to you, lift a song. We've seen the things that you've done, and still we know the best is yet to come. There's more to come. Open the gates. Open the gates and let your glory come down. Open our hearts and let our worship pour out. Your presence here is all we need. You break our chains with sounds of victory. You're changing everything. Sing it out. Open the gates and let your glory come down. Open our hearts and let our worship pour out. Sing that again. Open the gates and let your glory come down. Open our hearts and let our worship pour out. Flood the space. Come flood this space. No one else could take your place. Come have your way. No one else could take your place. Come flood this space. No one else could take your place. Come have your way. No one else could take your place. So open the gates and let your glory come down. Open our hearts and let our worship pour out. Yeah. Open the gates and let your glory come down. Open our hearts and let our worship pour out. Yeah. Oh. Let's continue to lift our voices. Our God is very near. He is great. Gives us the breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to Him and Him alone. Sing with me. You give life. You give life. You are love. You bring light to the darkness. You give hope. You restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. Pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. Great are you, Lord. We're going to sing all that again. You give life. You give life. You are love. You bring light to the darkness. You give hope. You restore every heart that is broken. it's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. Sing with all the earth, lift it up. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. Sing it again. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. One more time. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. Great are you, Lord. Oh, so great are you, Lord. God, we lift our voices to you. We lift our hearts to you today. We thank you for loving us no matter where we are or what we've done. We thank you for your compassionate love, a deep love that is with us every day. We thank you for a reason to worship together today, a reason to lift our voices beyond everything that we may face. We know that you are great and you hold us in your hands. We give you all the glory and honor and praise in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, thanks for joining us tonight. Glad you're with us. Hey, before we continue, I want to say hey to us in the chat. We're so glad you're here.
Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Levinson, and I'm an alcoholic. I was separated from alcohol by the grace of a loving God on October 10th of 2012, and I have celebrated continuous sobriety since that day, nights, weekends, Super Bowls, and for that I'm very grateful. I am not the man standing here today that I was almost 8 years ago, and it is because I have found a loving God, and I found that loving God through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'll tell you a little bit about my drinking just so you understand that I qualify to be here. When I start drinking, I cannot stop, or if I can stop, I certainly don't enjoy it, meaning I can do one or the other. I can either control my drinking or I can enjoy it. I cannot do both. And sometimes I can stop for periods of time. That's what makes my disease so cunning and baffling, is that if given a proper stimulus or proper reason, I can go, maybe even a month, maybe even 6 months. But at some time, I will start drinking again. I have an abnormal reaction to alcohol. And when I put it in my system, I have a physical allergy that keeps me drinking, and I have a mental obsession that won't let me stop. Meaning I have a body that doesn't drink well and a mind that demands that I do. And I am powerless over alcohol. I am powerless over alcohol, and that's still true. That's still true today. So I started drinking alcoholically when I was 12 years old. And what I mean by that is that I drink with purpose. I don't drink socially. I don't drink casually. I don't understand social drinkers. I think they're weird. And I never drank socially. I would drink in social situations, but my drinking was never social. And of course, you know, I'm in high school, and I think that I'm drinking like everybody else, and I don't know that I'm going to be here. So, you know, if you offered me something, I said yes. Would you like to smoke this? Yes. Would you like to snort this? Yes. Would you like to lick this? Yes, absolutely. And I don't even care what direction we're going. Just let me know if we're going up or down. It really doesn't matter to me. What I'm going to explain to you is that I was trying to fill a God-sized hole that I didn't know that I had. And I certainly didn't know that that's what I was trying to fill. I just thought that I was a regular high schooler. I did not go to college right away after high school. I was involved with a group of friends who drank like me and drugged like me. And I couldn't understand why you would pay a state college to go off and drink. So we didn't. We got an apartment. We got jobs, jobs that paid the rent and for the booze and for the drugs. And we got down to the business of drinking. And I did that for a full 2 years. I'll tell you a story which I think really enhances and shows you what my drinking and drugging was like. So it was a Friday afternoon, and I'm on the phone with my mother, and I had had a bad day. And I was on the phone with my mother, and I was telling her what a bad day I had had. And a friend of mine walked into the door of my apartment, and he threw a liter bag, you know, one of those big Ziploc gallon bags. It was full of wonderful num-nums. And he threw it across the room at me, and it landed here squarely on my chest. And I said to my mother, "Ma, my day just got a lot better. I gotta go." Right? Because I don't even have to have it inside of me. Knowing that I have access to alcohol or drugs makes me feel better. Knowing that I have it, knowing that I'm going to get most of it if I play my cards right, makes me feel better. I do eventually go to college. I moved to New York City, and my drinking tapers off for a while. Again, I'm in a very high pressure elite school in New York, and my girlfriend moves to New York, and she doesn't like the drinking, and so I can taper off. I can control it. I'm not real happy about it, but I don't know what's going on necessarily. But I can control it for periods of time. And we get married, and we move. We move countries. We move to Israel. We were seeking spirituality. It's interesting. Most of my life, I've been seeking a spiritual solution, even when I didn't know that that's what I was seeking. I certainly did not know what was wrong with me at that time. And we get busy. We get busy moving, and we get busy getting married, and we get busy having kids and jobs. And again, for a time, all seems well. For a time, it looks like I'm managing my life. And I remember what happened. I was 30 years old. We were living in a brand new apartment, which we had bought. We had 5 kids at that time. And all I know is that I'm suffering from terrible anxiety. Awful, awful anxiety. And of course, you know, a wife, 5 children, a mortgage, a job, a lot of stress. And My drinking is starting to pick up at this time. I'm traveling internationally, which means a lot of duty-free. It means a lot of drinking in airports. I don't know if any of you are airport drinkers. Welcome. I love drinking in airports. And I've got this terrible anxiety. So I go to the doctor. And I say, "Doctor, I've got this terrible anxiety." And he says to me, "Michael, no problem. Mr. Levinson, please, let me give you something for that." And he writes me a prescription for Valium. And what I discover is that Valium and bourbon is better than bourbon alone, right? Why shouldn't I? This is all normal. This is all normal. And that led me to my next, 12, 16 years. 16 years. I was 30 years old when that happened. I remember it very clearly. Because right after that, I took a geographic, what we call a geographic. I didn't know it was that at the time. I picked up my wife and 5 children. Actually, I didn't pick them up. I left, right? We talk a lot about selfishness and self-centeredness in this program. It's unbelievable when I think about it today. I told my wife, "I'm moving back to New York. Please come join me. Sell the house, sell the contents, pack up the children. I'll be in New York when you get there." How lovely. And I know I was still married at that time because my wife said to me at that time, she said, "The family needs a happy father. And if the father's going to be happy in New York, we will go back to New York." And back to New York we went, and guess what? The father did not get happy. You see, because I take myself with me. I am the problem. I thought the problem was Israel. I thought the problem was my father, right? He was to blame. He was to blame. And off I went to New York. And I didn't get happy because I was still with me. And the drinking got heavier. And the drugs got heavier. I remember when we were living in New York, I had burned another job to the ground, as I'm good. See, I can get good jobs. I just can't keep good jobs, right? I burned my life to the ground over and over. And I had burned my life to the ground, and my parents came to New York. I was looking to buy liquor stores, which is what every good budding alcoholic should be looking into. And if you weren't thinking about wholesale alcohol, you're lying, because I know I was thinking about wholesale alcohol. And my parents left, and I remember they left on a Sunday morning, and Sunday afternoon, my wife sat me down. It was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Sunday, and she said, "Michael, listen, your parents are really excited about your new opportunities. And they'd like to help you in any way they can, but you're gonna have to stop drinking." And now it's Sunday afternoon, it's 3 o'clock, I have a drink in my hand. I remember it very clearly, I had a drink in my hand. But I look at her like she's from Mars. I don't understand what she's saying. What does my drinking have to do with anything? It was the first and almost only time until I got sober that anyone told me that I had a problem with alcohol. And again, she didn't tell me I had a problem with alcohol. She said I had to stop drinking. And I said, "Oh, okay, I can stop drinking." And I put the glass down. Well, I finished the drink, of course. Let's not get crazy. But I put the drink down. About 2 weeks into this, I developed this terrible dry cough. Many of you may have experienced it. It's annoying, it's at the back of the throat, it's this dry cough. So I go to the doctor. And the doctor says, "Mr. Levinson, of course." And he gives me a prescription for codeine cough syrup. A lovely thing, codeine cough syrup. And I'm managing my alcoholism with codeine cough syrup. And every 2 weeks, I'm back at the doctor getting more cough syrup. And nobody says boo. Nobody says anything. And 6 months later, I say to my wife, "Look, hon, I'm not an alcoholic." And I go right back to my drinking. And things progress and things get worse. In 2007, I had burned my life to the ground again in New York. There was nothing left for us to do there. And my parents asked us to come back to Israel. And I was out of plans, and I was out of money. And we moved back to Jerusalem, and my parents loaned us money to buy a new apartment, which I renovated beautifully. And I started a small business in the open air market of Jerusalem. The kids all went back into school. I had 7 at this point. Beautiful children, well-rounded. You know, those that had been born in Israel, I had ripped out and taken to New York, and they settled into the schools in New York. And then I ripped them out of the schools in New York and replanted them back in the schools in Israel. And they were well-adjusted and well-rounded and doing well in school. And this is where my alcoholism really started to kick my butt. And this is when I became a morning drinker, right? Because if you own your own business, especially if it's a food-based business, I had a little snack shop. We had a lot of slushy machines, iced coffee machines. Do you know how wonderful Bacardi 151 is added to any of those beverages? So, you know, and I would joke, I would say that, you know, you can't drink all day if you don't start in the morning. And, you know, on the outside, my life still looks manageable, right? I'm living in $1 million apartment. My kids are dressed and fed. I have a beautiful wife. She's socially active. And I'm running this business and drinking all day. And I get this terrible pain in the bottom of my feet. Again, it's a favorite malady of alcoholics and addicts. It's called plantar fasciitis. It's very painful in the bottom of the foot. And I go to the orthopedist, and the orthopedist puts me on Percocet, and the Percocet leads to OxyContin, and I'm off to the races. I was crushing and snorting enough OxyContin to kill a small elephant. And I'm going from doctor to doctor getting prescriptions. And I want you to understand that my wife at the time was there at every appointment. My drinking was not hidden. My drug use was not hidden. This is just who I was. I once said to my mother, and she told me about this after I got sober. I do not remember this conversation, but she once said to me, she said, "Michael, you once told me that OxyContin was your best friend," right? Because that's how I'm living. I think that I'm managing my life with alcohol and drugs. It's the only thing that's making my life bearable. And on the outside, everything looked great. Everything looked lovely. And I'm going from doctor to doctor and drinking all day and snorting oxys like they're going out of business. And I can't figure out why the business isn't making any money. And it's because my prescriptions run out and I got to buy it on the street, and that's expensive, and I'm in a cash business, and the cash is all, and I'm really flabbergasted. I don't know. I bring my mother in to help me with the bookkeeping. I'm like, "Ma, I don't understand where all the money is going." And we pore over the books. "Darling, the money's going up your nose." But no one wants to tell me that. Nobody wants to tell me that. And things got really dark. Things got really dark, especially in that last 6 months. The book tells me that the world becomes a dark and dangerous place. I remember in the few months before I got sober, my wife taking me into the bedroom and saying, "I'm going to stop letting you speak at the dinner table. You're scaring the children." That's a dark place to be. I once came home on a Friday afternoon and went to my room and shut the door, and I wasn't seen. I wasn't seen Friday night. I wasn't seen all day Saturday. And around Saturday afternoon, I realized that I was going to run out of what I needed. And it was winter time, and the buses only start running on Saturday night. So on Saturday night, I bundled up. I got out of bed, I bundled up. It was wintertime, it was snowing. And it was Saturday night, and my family hadn't seen me for 26 hours. And I came out of my room all bundled, and my 8-year-old daughter caught me at the front door, and she said, "Daddy, where are you going?" And I said, "Daddy has to go out." You see, that's where my alcoholism takes me. Do not get between me and what I need. I will sacrifice my wife, my children, my business. Alcohol had become my master. And I found myself in a fetal position in my bedroom, sobbing uncontrollably. This was maybe 6 weeks before I got sober. I was in a fetal position in my own bed, sobbing. My wife came into the room. She sat down on my bed and she said to me, "Michael, what if I told you that you wouldn't be alone through this? What if I told you that we'll be there together and we'll get through this together?" And after a good solid 5 minutes of sobbing, ugly crying, I said to her, "I don't believe you." Can you imagine? Can you imagine being that wife? Can you imagine being that husband? October 10th is my sobriety date, but it is not when I hit bottom. I hit bottom some 2 weeks before that. I came home one afternoon after spending a good half hour on the phone. I was in town and I was screaming at my wife over the phone, threatening all sorts of terrible things. And when I got home, I found my father and a friend of mine who was big and muscly, and they escorted me out of my own house. I was thrown out of my own house by my own father. And I understand today that he was doing the only thing he could in the only way he knew how. He saved my life that day. I didn't know it at the time. I was angry. Oh man, I was angry, pissed. But I know today that he saved my life that day. And I went to a medical detox. The surgeon afterwards said that I had enough narcotic in my system, that it wasn't a matter of an overdose. I want to make sure that everyone's real clear about that, especially with today's pharmaceuticals and today's drugs, today's fentanyl. It's not about an overdose. It's about any dose. It's about the next dose. And I was put into a lockdown rehab for 7 months. I was there for 8. I'm a slow learner. And that's where I was introduced to powerlessness. It was a word I had never known. It wasn't a word in my vocabulary. As I started this talk, I was all powerful. I was God. And it was in hitting that bottom and meeting God as the gift of desperation that I started on this road of recovery. Now, I want to tell you that recovery and sobriety is not all unicorns and rainbows. That marriage did not survive sobriety. Of my 7 children, 1 currently speak to me. And that's varied over time. I've had as many as 3 in my life. I currently have a relationship with 1, but I will tell you that my door is open. My door is open, and whenever they're ready, and whenever God is ready, then I'm ready for them to come through that door. But I trust God today. I have a loving God in my life, and I trust His plan. I pray and I meditate for those children. I pray and meditate for my ex-wife by name every day. I pray for her happiness and for her health and for the happiness and health of my children. But I no longer run my life. God runs my life. The program tells me that God wants me to be happy, joyous, and free. And most days, I am. I have found a way to have serenity even in the face of calamity. And I use the spiritual toolkit that has been so freely given to me to stay sober one day at a time, to be of service to others, and to be of service to the God of my understanding. And that's where my happiness comes from today. That's where my peace comes from today. My peace comes from giving back what was so freely given to us. And I would like to pray out with something we call the third step prayer. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.
That, my friends, was Michael Levinson. He and I have been close friends since our senior year in high school. And I got to tell you, normally when I'm sitting and watching someone film a testimony, it fills my eyes with tears, and I move, and I can feel the Spirit in me. It's a little different when I'm a player in most of the stories that are being told, and I can remember the events that are being recalled. So my deep thanks to my good friend Michael Levinson. You can try and find him on Facebook. You can get him to tell you embarrassing stories about me, which I think is always a lot of fun, and he's got a full truckload of them. The last thing I wanted to say is just to encourage everyone, if you're seeing this, that means you're watching us online, which is great. We love to have you, but we would really love to have you come down to the church 5:30 or 6 o'clock any Monday. Participate with us, do CR in person, because we are back to meeting in person, and stick around, please, for those open share and step study groups afterwards. Actually, sorry, small correction. We're not serving a meal, so please feel free to show up about 6:15. We would love to have you. Bye.